What's this? A letter for me.
Welcome to another episode of Remember the Great Sports Through the Mail Thursdays. Today I'm going to share with you 3 envelopes, and I will pop these open and just see who they are. I'm not sure what sport they are. I have a good idea who one of them is because of the postmark, but we're going to save that one for last. So let's get right to it. All right. The first one is from former Los Angeles Dodger Tom Niedenfuer / Seattle Mariner / Baltimore Oriole / St. Louis Cardinal. That's a minor league card to him towards the end of his career. Kind of got a glare there, so we'll throw it over there. Anyways, Tom Niedenfuer. Tom Niedenfuer played, 10 years in the majors. 7 of those years were with the Los Angeles Dodgers. After the Dodgers, he spent 2 years with the Baltimore Orioles on this card. And played then for the Seattle Mariners for a season and then the St. Louis Cardinals. So, technically, with the exception of the top 2, I have one of each team that he played for there, technically. So who was Tom Niedenfuer? Niedenfuer was drafted by the Dodgers in the 36th round, which is way down there, of the 77 draft. He worked hard to work his way up through the Dodger system, and in 1981 he appeared in 17 games and went 3-1 with a 3.8 ERA for the Los Angeles Dodgers, who later went on to play in the World Series that year. So he got the opportunity to play in the World Series his rookie season. He played through the 1987 season with the Los Angeles Dodgers, but some of the Dodgers fans here will attest to me, and don't yell at me too much, what Tom Niedenfuer did against the St. Louis Cardinals in 1985. First and foremost, he's known to have given out the walk-off home run to Jack Clark in the playoffs. And second, and more importantly, he's known for giving up a home run to Ozzie Smith, also in that same playoff situation. So, not one of the finest hours of his career in both instances when he was basically teed off by both of those St. Louis Cardinal greats. He stuck around with the Dodgers a little bit more after that. Went on to play for the Orioles and the Mariners, as you can see on the cards there. And the ironic twist of fate is the team that he struggled the most famously against, I guess you would say. I mean, maybe he had worse records against other teams, but those 2 pitches are what he's known for, unfortunately. Kind of like Ralph Branca with Bobby Thompson's walk-off home run. And the Cardinals signed him to a minor league deal where he spent part of the season with the minor league team and part of the season with the major league team. I happen to have this set, and I've been getting quite a few people. If you remember some of the other videos, I've gotten like Craig Wilson back and a couple others out of that set I have out there. And I thought, well, what the heck? Why not send it to Mr. Niedenfuer and ask him to sign? So, Tom Niedenfuer, thank you very much for signing these for me. I really appreciate it. A welcome addition to the collection, especially as a Cardinal fan. Not to say, negative things about you, but, you were a Cardinal also, even though you were Dodger blue. So, okay, this next one is postmarked from Vermont. Okay. And this, I tore my plastic apart. And this one is signed 3 of 4. He did not sign 1. And that is former Seattle Mariner Jim Beattie, or Beattie, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, on 3 of 4 cards, which is fine. Jim Beattie, as you can see, was a pretty decent pitcher for the Seattle Mariners. And this year in particular, he led the team with ERA. However, that's kind of a dubious honor because that was a pretty bad Seattle Mariners team in 1982, if I'm not mistaken. They weren't too well known or too laid with superstars, let's put it that way. Beattie was a starter most of his career. Appeared in 182 games as a starter out of 203. So he only, appeared in just over, 20 games as a reliever. So primarily, most of his career, he was not a winning pitcher. He had a losing record. Actually, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So out of his 9-year career, he had a losing record 8 of those 9 years. So not really the best honor to have there. So a major leaguer through and through, but not really a dominant major leaguer for that era, despite having a pretty good year in 1982 as the leader there with the Seattle Mariners pitching staff. That season he went 8-12, so 8 wins, 12 losses, despite having that ERA, which tells me that he pitched for some pretty bad teams. A 3.3 ERA is pretty darn good, and that tells me that the team didn't really support him with run support, or he would go out for a decision and the bullpen would blow the lead or whatever. So post-playing career, this is what Jim Beattie, or Beattie, again, maybe pronouncing his name wrong, I apologize. Post-playing career, he actually became a general manager of the Montreal Expos, and later, after his stint with the Expos, he went on to become the general manager of the Baltimore Orioles. He was let go from both of those positions, I believe, and after he was finished being a general manager, he moved on to professional scouting, and according to his Wikipedia page, he still works for the Toronto Blue Jays in a scouting capacity. So if you have a minor league affiliate that's affiliated with the Toronto Blue Jays, there's a slight opportunity Jim Beattie might be at one of the stadiums checking out some of the prospects. You just never know. So anyways, Mr. Beattie, thank you very much for signing those. And the next player, I believe, is a former Seattle Mariner, because this is postmarked from Seattle, Washington. And it is indeed one of my favorite players ever. And that is Mr. John Olerud on 1, 2, and I had a third in there, which I thought was a really cool card. Like, if I were to choose which two or which one I wanted signed, that probably would have been one of them. But, whatever. You can't be greedy. He at least signed 2 for me. This is the second time I believe I've ever gotten him. I wrote him many, many years ago. I mean, probably we're talking like over a decade. And I want to say he signed 3 for me then. So if you do decide to write him, you're probably looking at 2 or 3, maybe even 1, if he even replies. So, John Olerud, probably, if not one of the greatest college players to ever play the game. Well, let me rephrase. Probably had one of the best college seasons of anybody ever to play college baseball. He went to Washington State University, which is, where he's from, the Washington State, not Washington State itself. Born in Seattle, Washington, so he went to Washington State University and played baseball there. He played 3 seasons and was going to come back for his 4th until the Toronto Blue Jays gave him an offer he couldn't refuse, and he signed professionally. But in 1988, his sophomore season, these are his stats, okay? These are just amazing. He batted .464, had 23 home runs, 81 RBIs, and 108 hits while batting for Washington State. That's not enough. He went 15-0 as a pitcher with a 2.49 ERA with 113 strikeouts. Yes, he was a two-way player in college, which means not only was he exceptional with the bat, he was exceptional throwing the ball as well as a left-handed pitcher. 15-0. So he went back for his junior year. He did not match the numbers like that his junior year, but he did have a pretty solid year his junior year, but not like he did his sophomore year. Well, he had planned on coming back for his senior year, and the Blue Jays basically gave him an offer he couldn't refuse financially, and he signed professionally. So we'll move on to his professional career. Not only was this guy a stud, so to speak, in college, he went on to play 17 seasons in the majors. Okay? Now, his first season, he only played 6 games because this was right after his college years. He spent a very short period in the minor leagues. But in 1989, at just 20 years old, he made his debut with the Blue Jays. The following season in 1990, he was their full-time first baseman at 21 years old. And if anybody collected cards back in the day, they can remember John Olerud being a big-time prospect. In his rookie season, he batted .265 and hit 14 home runs. Not bad for a 21-year-old. Well, after that, he would go on to play mini seasons and win a batting title in particular in 1993, where he batted .363 and hit 24 home runs. He was on the World Series teams of the Toronto Blue Jays that won the World Series. He was only a 2-time All-Star, which is very surprising for the consistency that he had. But when it was all said and done, John finished with a .295 batting average and 2,239 career hits and 255 home runs. He spent his seasons primarily with the Blue Jays. However, after he left the Blue Jays, he did play for Seattle. He went to the Mets. I apologize. He played for the Mets immediately after the Blue Jays. I actually had the opportunity to see him play when he was with the Mets. I remember specifically going to a game circa 1998 when the Mets played the Cardinals during the home run chase, McGuire, all that stuff. And I want to say I went to a game when the Mets played them and Olerud was their first baseman. And I saw him play there. Then after he left the Mets, he had a homecoming, and he went to the Seattle Mariners for, 5 years. After the Mariners decided they no longer needed his services at the age of 35, they traded him to the Yankees during mid-season in 2004. And after the 2004 season, he signed a 1-year deal with the Boston Red Sox at 36 years old, where he kind of played part-time. He wasn't their full-time first baseman, but in his final season, he batted .289 and hit, how many home runs he had? 7. He had 7 home runs in his final season, which isn't a whole lot, but playing part-time, that's pretty good. So, John Olerud, one of the best college baseball players ever to play. That season that he had was unbelievable. As a pro, one of the most underrated hitters probably ever from that era. From the 1990s through 2000, the early 2000s, John Olerud was one of the most consistent hitters ever to play in baseball. You knew the production level that you would get from John Olerud year in and year out. So, thank you, Mr. Olerud. I really appreciate adding another one of these autographs to my collection. Like I said, I wrote you many, many years ago when it was probably closer to when you retired, actually, 2007-ish, somewhere in there, and you obliged then. So it's good to see that you still are, with a fan request, you're still taking care of your fans. So thank you, Mr. Olerud. Thank you, Mr. Beattie. And thank you, Mr. Niedenfuer, for signing cards for me. I appreciate you guys joining me for another episode of Through the Mail Thursdays. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to your comments below. Bye.